just 24 hours, Airbnb's announcement that they laid off 1,900 people, about 25% of their workforce, has become one of the most talked about topics in the startup community. As an Airbnb host myself for 5 years, and as a business owner, I'm going to give you my thoughts, what I think this means for Airbnb, and what it means for hosts around the world. This is Rakidzich, Airbnb Automated. Let's jump in. Airbnb family, YouTube world, welcome back. Those of you new to the channel, not only am I an Airbnb host of 5 years with 100 properties on the platform, but I own multiple businesses. I've been a small business owner for about 10 years, so I have a little context outside of just being an Airbnb host. But this is particularly interesting to Airbnb hosts because we, of course, rely on the Airbnb platform for a large portion of our short-term rental business. For those of you that don't know, yes, Airbnb is the biggest player in the short-term rental game, especially here in the United States. Many hosts get over 90% of their revenue from Airbnb themselves. Now, there's been a long, tumultuous couple of months where Airbnb's made some tough decisions that have angered many hosts. You've probably seen it in the news, where Airbnb gave guests complete refunds. Hosts were outraged. Airbnb doubled back, created a $250 million fund to pay hosts a portion of what they lost. Many hosts don't think that it's enough. You know, you've seen it all, and I will leave multiple links in the description below to catch you up on some Airbnb history, just so you can have some context here. So my reaction for the layoffs, I don't think anybody's surprised. Anybody who's a business owner, who's ever had to make hard decisions is probably not surprised by this. It completely sucks. And they did do it just kind of like last minute without announcement, but they're not the only ones. If you look, at recent news, you'll see that TripAdvisor laid off 25% of their staff. Bird, the fastest company to hit $1 billion valuation, laid off 30% of their staff on a Zoom call that lasted for 2 minutes. Super brutal. A lot of startups like Lyft and Uber are suffering. Like, I think Lyft actually laid off 17% of their staff as well. Their stock prices are down, same with Uber. Now, these companies are tech companies. Airbnb is a tech company as well, mostly because obviously they don't own the real estate that they leverage on the platform, but these companies can tend to have a sort of hubris, right? They've got that Silicon Valley giant VC-backed like swagger to them. And Airbnb is not run by a seasoned CEO with a background of business success. He actually went to school for design, and him and his buddies moved to San Francisco to just start a business. They did not know what they were going to start. They actually started Airbnb as a way just to pay their rent 1 month. And then they spent 4 months trying to do something else. And they only fell back on Air, Bed, and Breakfast months later when their families are like, do you need money? What are you doing with your life? And they're like, no, we're entrepreneurs. And they're like, what did you start? They're like, Air, Bed, and Breakfast. So they finally doubled down on the idea after they ran out of other options, joined Y Combinator. And then they, of course, found some really killer mentors that helped them grow their business. But nobody ever believed in the idea from the beginning. Right? So the moral of the story here is that the founders of Airbnb, the ones that started it and then ran it and built it and scaled it, and now, Brian Chesky is still the CEO, they aren't business owners by nature, and they kind of drank the Kool-Aid. They drank the Silicon Valley Kool-Aid. The delay on these layoffs were extremely irresponsible and a byproduct of that hubris. See, Airbnb, in their 25% layoffs, they've laid off business managers. I have a business rep, or had a business rep at Airbnb, and I do believe that I don't have one anymore. And that was a non-core role, trying to convince people like me to keep growing the business and support me with my 100 properties. They also had a transportation product that they were working on. And of course, they've got their Lux product, and they have different projects that were non-core that they had staff on top of. And when it hit the fan, coronavirus hit the fan, they were still in these projects trying to retain this staff, and of course letting that money bleed. They basically let a large amount of their cash flow bleed on non-core projects, non-core staff. When you look at this and compare it to Apple, when Steve Jobs came back and he cut all the products out and really got back down to their core offering to really grow on excellence, this is the philosophy that Airbnb is adopting. Now, Brian Chesky loves Steve Jobs. That's like one of his favorite people, because if you watch old interviews at Harvard iLabs, I believe, or Stanford Graduate School of Business, one of the YouTube channels from one Ivy League school interviewed him. It's called Blitz Scaling, and he was interviewed. And in there, he talks about how he wanted to use the iPod 3 Touch to play a song approach to the design style for the website. So of course, he's going to be following a lot of Apple's best practices here when the going gets tough. What I think this shows is that this pandemic was a bucket of cold water for Airbnb, and all the mistakes that they have made up until this point, with all their swagger and their hubris and their, self-assurance and their VC capital and their we can't lose attitude racing towards their IPO. I think this is the most humbling experience that they've had to go through. This is true failure for them. This wasn't just raising money that was expensive. This was cutting pet projects, passion projects, cutting staff that they may have retained for years. They had to see people essentially die within the organization. And this is going to shake Airbnb awake. This may not be the very last of the bad news we hear from Airbnb, but I do truly believe that this level of loss, this, financial punch to the face per se, is going to teach Airbnb a lesson that they're not special, that they're not a unicorn like they thought they were, that they're not able to just do whatever they want and just print money, with venture-backed capital, and they're going to get to their IPO one day and it's all going to be okay. They have to look at this as a very real problem where lives are on the line financially, and they have to humble themselves and realize that they don't know what's going on a lot of the times. So they're going to shore back up to their core business offering. They're going to try to get back to the roots of what Airbnb was before, back to how they grew and had so much adoption. And I think hopefully this means that they're going to realize how important that us hosts are. And at the end of it, us hosts might actually get what we deserve from Airbnb as far as the care and the attention that we've lost over the last couple of years. You can ask any host out there, Airbnb is not what it used to be, but this could very well bring them back to the table like they should be. I look forward to your thoughts in the comments. This is meant to be a discussion, so get down there, let me know what you think. I will see you in the comments. Thank you for watching Airbnb Automated, and I'll see you on the other side.